Barclay Radebaugh has been the head men's basketball coach at Charleston Southern University for 16 years. I talk one-on-one with the coach for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Coach Barclay Radebaugh, welcome to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, it's so good to see you. It's so good to see you. Merry Christmas.
Likewise, and obviously you're a legendary at CSU.
Oh my goodness.
And let me talk to you about it, because obviously you have presided over one of the most successful stretches in this school's history, obviously during your 16 years as head coach, and you're one of the winningest coach in school's history, and one of the 8 coaches to win multiple Big South Coach of the Year awards. Let me ask you this, Coach. What is the biggest difference between 16 years ago and right now?
Wow, that is a great question. It's amazing what God has done in 16 years. Just amazing, both in our program and in our players and in me. And so probably the biggest change in me has been the reason that I coach. And I love to win now. I love to win. And I adore winning. But it has become part of our program and not the central focus of our program. In this order, and the biggest difference between now and when I first took over at CSU is this. In this order, we want to see our players grow to be dependable men, first and foremost. And so every decision we make, everything that we do is based on helping them grow into dependable men. Now, Quintin, that encompasses a lot. And let me explain what I mean by that. When you coach a program where you're going to love unconditionally, a lot of stuff comes to the surface that, Quintin, wouldn't come to the surface if you coached with fear and intimidation. Because when a player feels unconditionally loved, the junk will come to the surface. And so we have the privilege of getting to deal with that. It makes it very difficult. But we get to see the best of these young men. But because we love unconditionally, they also show us the worst. And that's the only way for a guy to grow. It's the only way for a player to grow is for them to be able to show you the best, but also to show you the worst. The best we can still improve on, but the worst parts of them and the worst parts of all of us, if we're honest and truthful, that's where God does his greatest growth.
Indeed, absolutely.
The second priority is academics. And we've graduated 56 out of 57 since I've been the head coach here. And that is often a fight too, because, Quintin, they come in at all different academic abilities. Some up here, some down here, and some because of the background that they've had and the preparation that they've had. Some have had great preparation academically in high school and some not so good. But I learned a long time ago that the goal is graduation. And so we just keep plugging and plugging and plugging and working and working and working with the goal of graduation. And some of them, Quintin, have graduated with honors, and some of them have graduated barely. But they've all graduated but one. And then our third priority, and really the biggest change, is that basketball is third. And so we want to grow the total man. And that makes us a little bit different because a lot of places, and it's okay because it's a different philosophy, are just basketball, basketball, basketball. And we've grown away from that into, we want our program to be about growing the total man.
Yes, indeed. What exactly is the central focus of your program right now?
The central focus is just those 3 things. I mean, every day we focus on those 3 things. Like we're shooting. Right now, I came up to do this interview with you, and our team is downstairs shooting. Wow. We had a guy 8 minutes late to shooting. So right now, we know that you can't be late to work. I can't be late to work. So I look at that, instead of looking at that as a negative, I look at that as an amazing teaching time to help this young man learn you can't walk into shooting 8 minutes late, just like you can't walk into your job 8 minutes late. So he'll have immediate consequences, and then he'll have immediate restoring. So what that means is the consequences will be tough, but then we'll immediately restore him. And what that means is after he's done with his consequences, I'll give him a hug, tell him I love him, don't be late again. Because if you're late again, it's going to be the same consequences. So we've really worked hard on developing the right mix of grace and law. And that's something that we're continually working on.
And I know, well, let me ask you this, Coach. How do you translate the grace and obviously, what you said, the law, onto the basketball court?
Yeah. And this is a lot of what we're dealing with now. Each year presents different obstacles in a different team because you're dealing with different personalities. Right now, we're dealing with that in a very big way in our program. What we do off the court translates onto the court. If you can't be a man of small details off the court, then you can't be a man of small details on the court. And so our team, and we're growing and we're working on it, has not been a team that has been a great team dealing with the small details off the court. And so as you watch us play, it looks like that on the court. And you can't segment areas of your life. Okay, I'm going to be attentive to details only when I play basketball. It never works. It transcends into your entire life, or it doesn't, Quintin. There isn't a guy, well, I'm going to pay great attention to my academics, but I'm not going to pay attention to my punctuality. It doesn't work that way. It's all or it filters into all the areas of your life. And so what we're working on, and taking what God has brought us here, is we're working on being more attentive to small details. Now, it's been particularly difficult this year because we've had less time with our guys because of coronavirus. Just so many things have changed, which have presented even additional obstacles because our guys are isolated. They're having to stay in their room. They're not around as much as we would want them to be around. And so it's been particularly challenging, but we serve a big God, and we'll be just fine.
Absolutely. And what are those small details?
The small details are just the same thing that would be the small details in your life and my life. If I say something, am I going to live up to that? If I say I'm going to be there at 9:00, am I going to be there? Am I going to be, let me get you back there. Am I going to be there at 9:05? If I say that we have shooting, are we going to be on time? Training room on time? How about our sleep habits? Division I athletes have to have great sleep habits. Are we disciplined with that? Or are we staying on our screens until 3 a.m? How about your diet habits? We can make choices each day in the cafeteria. We can make choices to stop by a fast food store on the way home, restaurant on the way home, or we can go to the grocery store and purchase healthy food. It's more labor intensive, Quintin, because you got to go home and prepare it.
Right.
And then what about our hydration habits? The fastest way to get fatigued is to dehydrate. And so are we paying attention to the small details that help us be great players? And that has been a big challenge for this team, and something that we're continuing to really, really focus on and work on.
Yes, indeed. And I know you talked earlier about COVID. Obviously, games and practice are back on at the Buck Dome. After a non-player tested positive recently and was immediately isolated, you told Live 5 News, quote, when you come back from a quarantine, you don't want to do too much because you risk a serious injury. What injuries are you worried about right now, Coach?
Yeah, well, let me tell you my philosophy on that. When we go home for Christmas, we usually take 4 days off for Christmas. But Quintin, we send home a running program with them. So say we're off from the 21st to the 26th, 5 days. On the 22nd, we'll ask them to sprint. On the 24th, we'll ask them to sprint. And then we'll get them back on the 26th. When you quarantine, our guys were in their room with no activity for 7 days. I mean, you think about that. Just think about that in your life, in my life. If we were in a dorm room for 7 days with no activity, I mean, that's really, really tough. And so to transition them back into the Division I pace of basketball, to the Division I pace of getting up and down the court, to an hour and a half to 2 hour practice, is something that you can't just jump back in. You can't just jump back in after 7 days and say, okay, we're going to go back to right where we were. And so I want to be really smart on that with building back into conditioning, building back into fitness that it takes to play a game. And so we've had to be, our first day back, we practiced 51 minutes. We usually practice 120 minutes. And then we practiced 74 minutes yesterday. So we're going to try to get it up to 90 minutes today, knowing that we play Monday. And I just wanted to be smart on that and make sure, because we've had so many injuries already, I want to make sure that we didn't add to that injury list.
Yes, indeed. What else has your team risked, obviously, besides postponing these games because of, COVID and whatnot?
Say it again? What have we?
What else have your team risked besides postponing games because of COVID?
What have we risked?
Yes, sir.
A risk?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Just the practice time, the time together as a team.
Yes, sir.
We lost, a really special game for us. We were going to get to play at Duke.
Yeah.
And that was an experience for these guys. We want to give them a great experience, particularly our seniors. We lost a game at North Carolina Central that I thought would be very healthy for us because they're a really good team. So it would be like playing a really good Big South team on the road. Would have been really healthy for us to prepare for that and be able to have to fight through that. And so we just, but we can't focus, Quintin, we can't focus on the negatives. We got to focus on the positives. And we trust God that was the time that we needed for a rest, that we needed that time away, and that something good is going to come out of it.
Absolutely. And let me take you to WCIB. Obviously, the Charleston Southern men's basketball team had to pause all of its activities after a positive COVID test. How many activities did you all pause in addition to those games?
We paused weights. We weren't able to get into the training room and get our rehab, and then practice. So we lost 4 big things. Our day, like today, Quintin, our guys will be here in the morning. They shoot in the morning for 35 minutes. We shoot in 2 groups to be able to get a large number of shots up because we're not in class. Then they go to the training room at 11 and get rehabilitation. And for those who aren't hurt, we're working on stabilizing muscles. We're working on other parts of prehab, not rehab, but prehab. And then, we have an opportunity to get in the weight room. Some days are lifting, some days are heavy stretching. Some days are muscle development without weights, using bands, and then practice. And so when we don't have any of that for 7 days, it pauses all that. And so, but that's what we have. And so we got to turn it into a positive and see how we can go with it.
And I know, according to school officials, a non-player tested positive and immediately was isolated. How long was that non-player in isolation?
All of us were in isolation for 7 days. The person who had the COVID was in isolation for 10.
Wow. And was that non-player connected to the university?
Yes.
Okay.
We have, it's really interesting, Quintin, we have tiers. The NCAA has developed tiers. A tier 1 person is a person that is closely associated with our everyday activities. So a player, a coach, a trainer, a manager, a video coordinator, a director of basketball operations, anybody that is closely involved with our everyday activities are our tier one. So it was a person within our tier one.
Yes, sir. And the team is going to was going to contract tracing and testing protocols following NCAA, Big South, and school guidelines. What are those contract tracing and testing protocols?
Yeah, the testing protocols were anybody within 6 feet for 15 minutes. That would make them a contact traced person. So that person would be subject to the quarantine.
Yes, sir. And I know the recent game against Duke and Tuesday's game against North Carolina had to be postponed naturally. How many players are scheduled to play for each of those particular games?
Yeah, we would have had our full team minus those that are injured. So if we would have played against Duke and North Carolina Central, we would have had 11 players eligible to play.
And how many players are injured right now?
2.
Okay. And you said this quote, obviously, I am thankful for the commitment that CSU has made to provide an extensive and well thought out testing program for our team. I know and trust that God has a plan for our team, and we look forward to returning to the court when it's safe to do so. Go Bucks. Yes, sir. What's God's plan for the team now that the playing has actually resumed?
We're going to find out. We operate on what I believe God has given us for this program. And we discussed that earlier. I believe that our job is to grow dependable men. Our job is to love them unconditionally. Our job is to not only love them in the good, but Quintin, to love them in the bad. And that's really hard to do. In the bad, I watch people fall away. It's very rare that you find people that are willing to get in the trenches with these guys. And that's what they need the most. They need trench foxhole people in their lives because they bring stuff to our program that isn't pretty. And so I believe with all my heart, and however long God uses me in the coaching profession, my number one priority will be to help them to become dependable men by God's grace. Yes. And so sometimes it's not pretty. It's not pretty, Quintin. Sometimes it is pretty. I mean, we love it when we get the players of the year, and we love it when we win the big games, and we love it when we play in a packed Buck Dome and everybody's. But what about the other times? What about the other times when it's not pretty? Are we only just going to care about these guys when they're player of the year or they make 5 threes, or are we going to care about them when the ugly parts come out? And we're going to care about them as long as I'm the head coach here. We're going to care about the good and the bad.
Indeed.
And we're going to not walk away from them or turn our backs on them when they make a mistake. Sure. We're going to actually dig in deeper, Quintin. We're going to actually dig in deeper. We're going to be willing to get involved with them when they have a bike wreck, when they're laying on the ground and they're bloody. We're not going to walk away from them. We're going to get down with them, and we're going to help them get back on the bike. And so every day I think about that. Every day, Quintin, I think about that. Yeah. I think about, sometimes what these guys bring in here it's just tough. And are we going to walk away from them, or are we going to dig in? I want to be a team where we dig in. And we have opportunities to love them through failure. Or we can just mask it and pretend like it's not there. And then they walk away from us in 4 years and they're no better than when they got here. Sure, they made some buckets and we won some games, but is that really the purpose that Dr. Naismith, when he invented this game, is that really the purpose of basketball? Or was the original purpose of the basketball to lead people into a relationship with Christ and to use a game to help develop a person? And so I think about it every day. I think about it every day, every single day. I think about it. And as long as I'm the head coach here, that's how we're going to operate.
And I know, let me go to Duke University because you talked about them earlier. The Duke Chronicle wrote a preview of your season, ironically. Let me read a snippet of it. It says Charleston Southern has not won the conference tournament since the 1996-97 season, but it has a sore core of returners that will work in its favor. How many returners are working in your favor right now?
Well, it's kind of changed. Quintin, it's kind of changed. We went from the most experienced team in the league to one of the least experienced when we lost our starting point guard and our starting two guard for the season. And so that's one of those things that you can't anticipate that happening.
Yeah.
And that central core of returners was cut in half. But that's what we got. And so just here, are we going to walk away from it and make excuses, or are we going to deal with it and trust God that he's developing some additional guys, some new guys, and putting them in a really tough circumstance to help them grow? And when you look at it that way, it brings great peace.
Yes, indeed.
It brings great peace.
And I know the preseason ranking of third in the conference is puzzling, according to the Duke Chronicle, considering that you all don't have the statistics that point towards a dramatic turnaround for this season. What statistics describes your season right now? We're in a work in progress. We're a work in progress. We're a work in progress, and we weren't, but we are now. And we're developing young guys that we thought would be backups are now starters. And so our biggest area of concern has been turnovers. We turn the ball over too much, and you can't be a great team if you turn the ball over too much. And so that's our biggest area of concern right now. And I know Mr. Fleming is going to need someone to step up alongside him, according to the Duke Chronicle. And Mr. Buskie is a strong candidate in their mind after his performance last season. What's Mr. Buskie's performance right now?
He's out for the year.
Oof.
He's got a shoulder injury, and so that's been a big blow for us.
I know. I'm so sorry to hear that. And let me talk to you about, obviously, when they talk about optimism, they say if obviously Mr. Fleming gets a reliable sidekick this season, Charleston Southern is going to win its conference. With our perennial repeat champion, the Buccaneers have a good shot as someone else as far as finishing at the top. How reliable is Mr. Fleming and his sidekick?
Mr. Flan is one of the best players ever to put on a jersey here. He's one of the finest young men to ever put on a jersey here. He's going to be successful in life as a basketball player. He's going to be successful in life as a non-basketball player. And so he is reliable. He is dependable. He'll graduate on time with a business degree. And he's preseason player of the year. And you can count on Flanders.
Yes, indeed. And if I were to interview you, that is, for Quintin's Close-Ups 6 months from now, what would you tell me about your team?
That's a great question. I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know how. For us to be successful and to win the number of games that we would want to, we're going to have some of our young guys step up. We're going to have some of our young guys not play like freshmen. They're going to have to play like sophomores and juniors. And so I don't know what's going to go. I do know this, though. We're going to work harder than anybody in the country every day at it. And we're going to stay really positive, and we'll stay really upbeat. We won't demean. We won't shame. We'll tell the truth. And we will work as hard as we can to have the best team that we can. And then we'll tally them up at the end of the season. We'll tally them up. And we'll see how many games we won. And I think we have a great chance to be really successful.
Absolutely. Well, Coach Barclay, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome to the award-winning Quintin's Close-Ups.
Award-winning. Hey.
Yeah, I have 5 or 6 awards. I got the House resolution, all that stuff.
Way to go, man. Way to go. Way to go. And let me tell you why you win them.
Yes, sir.
Because you are really positive, and you are really a delight to talk to, and you are well-researched, very well prepared, and it's no doubt that you've won awards and no doubt that you'll continue.
Through the grace of God in Jesus Christ.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah, thank you.